The Blue Island Historical Society Virtual House Walk is made possible through the support of our members and generous donations from Alderman Fred Bellato, Alderman William Kezeris, Alderman Tom Hawley, the Chicago Bungalow Association, Blue Island Public Library, Francis Podbelski and Anna Montez, James Street Associates, Richard and Martha Luby, and Mary Cannell. Thank you. Should you wish to support Blue Island Historical Society and our ongoing house restoration, community outreach, and education initiatives, please visit blueislandhistoricalsociety.com.
It's a notable house. And even if you look online, because the staircase is visible through the front window, and because there were ads for the house on various real estate websites, people, more than people from Blue Island, were familiar with it and fell in love with it. So it's fantastic that, you know, after having sat vacant for all these years, really, that somebody's come back to love it.
There's, you know, a lot of exterior detail. What style is the home?
You know, the house I would call more than anything Italianate, which would have preceded the date that's being credited as the build date of the house by not too many years. And because Blue Island was some distance from the main part of Chicago at the time, it may be that whoever designed it wasn't quite up to date on what the latest architectural styles were. But those deep eaves and the cornice work and the brackets and the trim around the windows and everything, although the trim has incising in it that you could say was more Eastlake in style, and that would have been current.
What kind of changes were made to the home over the years?
The house was originally, the property that the house is built on originally included what is now the Keogh House immediately to the south of it. And there was a porte cochere built on the side of it, and the house was brick.
What's a porte cochere?
A porte cochere is a carriage porch, and the carriages would drive underneath the porch so that you didn't get wet when you were getting out with your relatives, the governor. And
so the home was brick?
Right. And you can tell that by looking at the outside, because there's reveals around the window that are deeper than they would be if the house was a frame house.
But at some point, like many structures in town, it was maybe done to modernize?
I don't think it was done to modernize. I think it was done to hide the fact that there was a wraparound porch that was part of that porte cochere. And there would have been a roof above it that probably wasn't done in the same finished brick that the rest of the house was done. So rather than replace the brick, they just covered up the whole house.
But was this house built as a single-family home? It's so large.
It was built as a single-family home, but interestingly enough, if you look at the census records show that in 1900 he had 3 boarders living with him. And I suspect that that's what the rooms on the 3rd floor were created for. And that's what the staircase going from the front of the house, from the second to the third floor, was created for, was to give his tenants a convenient way to get upstairs. The 3 tenants that he had at that time were young women who were school teachers. So, and one of his daughters was a school teacher, so it may be that there was a connection, and he saw them as a potential quality tenant that he didn't have to be too worried about living on the 3rd floor above him. Charles Young was the son of Joshua P. Young, who had come to Chicago in 1848 and built the first house that was south of Polk Street on the west side of Chicago. And he came to Blue Island in 1852 and bought the property between Burr Oak and Vermont Street and Western and Maple, and bought the property that had been owned by Carlton Wadhams, who lived over on High Street.
If you're familiar with Blue Island, this 80 acres that he purchased in this stretch here uptown is a pretty significant.
It's the major part of Blue Island, and in a biography of Joshua P. Young, it was considered the choicest residential piece of Blue Island, which it still pretty much has maintained. Because his father was in the real estate business, I would imagine that he stayed here in an area that needed to be that had the potential to be developed, and bought property here and used this area as a place for him to live and to earn his living.
Charles Spencer Young, or C.S. Young as he was professionally known, dealt broadly but specialized in Blue Island property. He was a founder of the Calumet State Bank, the first bank that opened in Blue Island, and in the mid-1890s served as a director of the Worth Township School District. C.S. and his wife Jenny Alexander Young were instrumental in the founding of the Blue Island Public Library, with C.S. serving as the first president of the board. In 1890, Jenny was a founding member of the Current Topics Club, hosting the early meetings of the group in the Young family home before those meetings moved to the library and the organization evolved into the Blue Island Women's Club. The club was a highly active and involved organization in Blue Island until their disbandment in the early 2000s. As one of their final acts of generosity, the Blue Island Women's Club voted to gift their headquarters to the Blue Island Historical Society, where we continue many of their traditions nearly 2 decades later. Shortly after the turn of the century, Nellie Bergen and her husband George, an engineer for the Rock Island Railroad, rented the home from Charles and Jenny Young. For roughly a decade, Nellie operated a portion of the home as lodging for workers from the railroad.
But from what I understand, it was, and I don't know how accurate this is, but I've heard that it was called the Rotunda Hotel as a place for Rock Island workers to rent rooms. And whether or not the whole house was taken over for that purpose or just the rooms that are up in the attic, which my suspicion would be were the rooms that the Youngs rented out to boarders.
Charles Young died in June 1910, and within a few years, the Young family sold the home to John and Will Klein as a residence for their mother, Teresa.
Either John or John and Will both moved their mother into that building. They bought it and established her in there, gave it to her in a sense, I guess. And that's where she lived for the remainder of her life, which was until 1933. She had a daughter, Minnie, who lived there with her, and a son, Dan, who lived there with her. Neither one of them ever married. And Dan passed away at the age of 55 in 1929. And Minnie continued to live with his mother, with her mother, until 1933, about a month or so after the mother died. She outlived. And when she died, then John, who lived across the street on the west side of Greenwood Avenue, he moved across the street and took over that home that the mother had lived in, and lived there until he passed away in the mid-1940s, 1950, about 1956 or thereabouts, if I'm not mistaken. He continued his involvement with the grain elevator until he passed away, and really until he went blind. He went blind a year or two before he died, glaucoma.
After the Klein family, the home was purchased in 1968 by Theodore Pyle and his wife Mabel, who lived there until 1973, when the home was sold to Victor and Leonarda Czekorowski. Victor served as a Polish machine gun officer in World War II. He was captured by the Germans in Warsaw in 1939 and was imprisoned for 5.5 years in a Polish officer's prison camp at Waldenburg, Germany. After liberation by the American Army, Victor returned to Hamburg University and became a European corporation lawyer. He came to Blue Island in 1951 to further his legal studies at Northwestern University, later obtaining employment with the Sunbeam Corporation. He and his wife raised 2 daughters in the home, with tenants on the second floor. Victor passed away in December of 2010, and the grand home on Greenwood Avenue sat vacant for nearly a decade.
Hi. Hey, folks.
Nice job.
Thank you.
All right. Hopefully, this will be hard to get an interview done.
Oh, yeah.
We'll
Right.
Say hi to everybody. So I'll just.
I guess it's a realistic portrayal,
okay.
though, you know?
My name's Ben Walker. I'm from St. Charles, Illinois.
My name is Joe Lemanchik. I grew up in Beverly, right down the street, and actually, I was born in Blue Island, so.
At St. Francis?
Yeah, at Little Company Mary, but my parents lived in Blue Island at the time. So this is a little bit of a homecoming for me.
And where are we right now?
The Charles Young House, which we are excited to be the new stewards of. So.
Yes.
And you bought the home in 2019?
2019, we closed the end of October 2019.
How did you even happen upon this property, to find it?
Well, we weren't even looking for a house. We currently live in the Uptown neighborhood, and I have an interior design business, and I have some clients in Orland. And Greenwood has always been my favorite streets to cut down to get to 135th Street and get up to Orland. And so I'd been down the street hundreds of times. And it was a day in late July. I stopped at the stop sign here at Union, and I just happened to notice the house peeking out from above all the 5,000 trees that were smothering it. And I just thought someone needs to love that house. I didn't notice the for sale sign or anything, just kept driving. And then the next week, I opened my Realtor.com app and the house just popped up without searching for it. And I just took that kind of as a sign. The universe was telling me that we need to at least go see it. Then I set up an appointment just after one of my meetings in Orland one day, and without Ben, just to see if it was even worth showing him, and I walked in the front door. That was it, So I called Ben, and he's like, let's just get it. And I was like, well, I'd like for you to see the house that you might spend the rest of your life in. So then we did, and he kind of fell in love with it too. And
Well, I mean, when you see pictures of that spiral staircase, it's hard not to gasp a little.
Whoever built that staircase was an expert craftsman, because it doesn't really have any visible signs of support between the first and the second floor. And the fact that everything fits together, and having climbed it myself and felt that it's very solid. Whoever put it together knew what they were doing. It's a beautiful piece of work.
About how long did it take for you to start, like, get in and to start work on it?
Well,
Not until
luckily,
January,
like,
right?
yeah, I mean, it's nice that, like, I kind of knew exactly what I wanted to do going in, and so,
He lost about a month of sleep before we'd even bought the house,
Right, just-
because he was designing everything. So I'm glad that we
kinda what
actually got it,
happens, yeah.
because all of that mental energy would have
Yeah.
been a waste.
but work started in earnest the end of January. Because the holidays came then, and so it was kind of hard to start anything. We had to get the permit and everything like that. So January 20th actually was the start date. Knock on wood, like, it has gone so overall really smoothly.
Yeah, no major surprises, no major pitfalls, no major setbacks.
Yeah, I mean, we're replacing everything, so that helps too.
Right.
But
Nothing can surprise us because we're just tearing it all out anyway.
yeah, I mean, we replace all the electrical, all the plumbing, heating and cooling. Like, those are a lot of the things that will go wrong. But before we
Structurally,
even
you were pretty set.
we had a structural engineer come in before we even, before we closed on the house. Our offer was contingent on that. And both the regular inspector and the structural engineer said, besides a few minor things, like, this house is solid. Like you said, the one of them used was a fortress. Like, it was just so well built.
And that's something you can't, we talked about this, you can't recreate.
No, I mean, most new houses now are not going to be around in 140 years. And this house still has another, hopefully, 140 years left in it.
And talk about some of those pieces that you're bringing in, some of those elements of who you are, how you're bringing that into the house. Because I know you're going to have space for all of the things that you both love.
Yeah.
Art.
Yeah, I think
Art.
for us, like we have a big art collection. It started when I had the gallery, and I would have artists come in, and sometimes I'd barter with them, like they could show for free in exchange for one of their pieces. And I've always had a large, friend circle of artists, and so over the years I've collected. I have about 60 original works, and right now most of them are stacked in a corner of our guest room because we're in a little condo in Uptown, and so now I'm like super excited to finally have them all have room, and we put lighting in the house to actually properly light them, and so I mean that's really exciting. And then from like an overall aesthetic, we're kind of trying to combine. I like the feeling of a house that has like grown over time. Like I don't want the house to feel like a museum, but we're gonna have a great collection of pieces from around the time the house was built. Some more modern pieces, and kind of fusing those together to just create this kind of cool, eclectic experience.
Well, and the way that Joe has visualized a lot of this, I'm just trying to still wrap my mind around, but is we're really going in the direction of preserving as much of the feel of the Victorian era as we can, while giving it like a little bit of a modern update. So that's going to come out more in some of the colors and finishes that we choose, but a lot of the molding and, like you saw, the tile for the kitchen is accurate to the period, but the pattern is a little bit more updated. So we're trying to marry those two as much as we can, and go from like what we were saying before, a little bit of a modern Addams Family vibe, because
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, we
We're a little creepy,
exactly.
like, in a fun way.
I can see the house respond when when you put that love into
Right.
it, and you open up the windows and you let the light in, and it's so transformative beyond that because the house
Yeah, I mean,
responds.
the energy has changed in me since we've undone some of the stuff that was done to it.
And
That, like, you could tell, like, the house was not happy about.
Yeah.
Like that wall in the kitchen, or like, things that were taken out, those stairs that were covered up. Like, I could actually feel like the house breathe a little bit. That awful stair of the third floor up here. Like, I could feel the house like breathe when that came down. Like,
Well, and that
This
resonates
is-
out too. Even after when we first took all the trees down, and Joe was like worried he's going to be like the Mr. T of
I
Blue
felt like
Island.
Mr. T, yeah.
not only could the house breathe, but like the community around it, like
Yeah.
we saw just heard this outpouring of relief of like, thank
I
goodness
was
we
so
can see
relieved
this
when I
house we
saw the
love so
positive
much.
comments, 'cause-
You know, like we feel better seeing the house this way, and so you know, it's. I think that's the other power of, again, the relationships within the community to this house, and why we want to make sure we're good stewards of it and bring the right energy to it for whatever spirit and energy still remains, but also because of the connection it has to the spirits of Blue Island. I know that there are people who have come by and stopped to like talk about the house who, you know, they drop hints throughout the conversation, whether they mean to or not, about like where their political leanings are. And so I've talked to people who I absolutely wouldn't have gravitated towards naturally. And those are some really special moments because we've been able to connect in some other way that, like, if we'd been interacting in like a social media comment thread, we probably wouldn't have connected on. So I'm really grateful
not
for
the other
that, and I'm
direction.
actually really looking forward to kind of the ways that that's going to influence me and how I'm going to be able to maybe influence others too. And you know, I'm sure that will not always be pleasant and easy, but I think it's going to leave some really interesting impressions, and that in and of itself will be an interesting gift and a journey to see like how Blue Island changes us.